Peace, guys. Welcome back to ZENSFXHUB, where macro and markets is simplified. And in this video today, we're going to talk about the US, China, and Russia and how we are seeing in real time a global reset. Okay, let's get into it. So the main objective of this slideshow is why the US, China, and Russia are in conflict, the different goals that's driving each country, the US versus China, US versus Russia, why China and Russia are acting as allies, but they really aren't, how this conflict reshapes global power, and what this means for markets and macro trends. So the core conflict, we got three different powers with three different goals. The United States wants to protect the current system, while China wants to reshape the system, and Russia wants to disrupt the system. So you got three different countries fighting in the same battlefield with different strategies. So why the US is at the center of this, okay? The US runs the current order right now in these moments and been for the last 81 years. We're still in a dollar-based financial system, meaning the US dollar is still the world reserve currency. Certain trades deals cannot get done without actually physically using the US dollar. The US has control over trade routes, which is super important because that's how things cannot get imported and exported without going through the United States. And if you didn't watch my video, this video right here, where Venezuela taking in Greenland next, why Trump wants to get a deal done in Greenland is because he wants the U.S. to be able to have control over that trade that area, that trade route, which he will pretty much have leverage over China and Russia. Okay, military alliances. The U.S. Military is very powerful. I want you to look up how many countries there are U.S. troops stationed in and bases. It's a lot. Okay, so do not underestimate just how powerful the U.S. Military really is. All right. The main goal for the U.S. is to maintain dominance without direct war. In that video I told you guys to go watch, I explained how Trump is using economics versus instead of using putting boots on the ground, starting a war to get what he wants. He's using, tariffs and stuff like that to get what he wants instead of causing havoc and chaos. So when it comes to threat, right, the threat that the U.S. is facing is from China. The attacks is coming from the economic side, while from Russia it's coming from the security side, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So U.S. versus China. China's main focus is manufacturing dominance, resource control, tech independence, and reducing the dollar reliance. So they don't want to rely on the US dollar anymore to get deals done. Okay. And the way the US is responding to this is tariffs. The US is making Chinese good more expensive to sell in America. And, if you live in America, you know that a lot of things that we buy is made in China. So that is a huge issue for them because we import a lot of their products. Okay, chip bans. US is blocking China from getting advanced computer chips for AI, weapons, and tech. Hence why China wants their own tech independence so they don't have to rely on the US to get the things that they need for them to, continue to move forward and grow and evolve. All right, sanctions. The US cuts countries, companies, and people out the global financial system like they did in 2022 to Russia. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you got some homework, go look it up. And military presence in Asia. So the U.S. is keeping troops, ships, and bases close to China just in case something pops off, they're ready to go. All right. Now, when it comes to U.S. versus Russia, Russia is using energy leverage, right? Oil and gas to put pressure on countries that depend on this energy. So, in other words, Russia is saying like, "Yo, look, we're gonna get busy on you if you don't continue to buy our energy from us." And again, going back to that video I told you guys to watch, please watch it because you'll be able to connect the dots of what I'm talking about. If you don't know what I'm talking about when I say that line, go watch that video. I'm not going to explain it in this video. So military force, that goes without saying. Cyber operations. So they are launching digital attacks to spy, disrupt systems, and spread confusion without actually opening warfare, right? Without actually starting a war. Okay. Regional destabilization. So it creates or supports conflict near its borders to keep regions unstable and weaken Western influence. Okay. And the way the U.S. is responding to Russia is military support, right? So the United States is arming and funding Ukraine to weaken Russia without the U.S. troops actually getting involved and fighting Russia directly. Okay. And if you don't know what that means, they're pretty much giving, the Ukraine's military money so that they can be able to defend themselves against Russia, which is an issue because, again, the United States is very powerful when it comes to military, when it comes to their military force. So if the United States do end up getting involved, then Russia got some problems. Okay, sanctions cut Russia off from money, trade, and technology to hurt their economy in the long run. So this goes back to what I said. You got another piece of homework. Go look what happened in 2022, 2023 to what the United States did to Russia, so you can understand that statement right there. Energy, right? So they're pushing allies away from Russian oil and gas to reduce Russia's leverage. And this is why Trump taking over the oil supply in Venezuela was super important, because Russia, you know what? You got homework to do. Go watch that video. I'm not even going to explain it because it's in that video. All right. And cyber operations. So pretty much the attacks that Russia is doing on the US is kind of playing defense and saying like, okay, if they do this, we're going to do this to make sure that the United States is safe and protected from the things that they're doing. All right. So Russia forces the US to spin, react, and stretch itself, keeping this war going on with Ukraine prolonged. That's more money that is coming out of the United States to be able to help, and aid Ukraine to fight against this war. Okay, Russia is attacking Ukraine because it is aligned with the U.S. and Western power, making it a strategic threat to Russia. Okay, so this is what is going on between Russia and the U.S. Okay, so China and Russia, they're not real allies. Okay, they're just in alignment with together by convenience, but they don't really trust each other. They just have a common enemy, right? So they share an opposition, which is the U.S. dominance. So they want less U.S. control over the global system. So they're like, hey, we don't want to continue to use the US dollar for deals. We don't want to continue to, we don't want the US to have leverage over us. Let's pair up. Let's work together so that we can be able to make our own deals on this side and exclude the United States, okay? But at the end of the day, they have different end goals, right? Like I said, China wants to reshape the system while Russia wants to disrupt it. Okay, and they're on different timelines. China is playing the long game, and Russia is reacting immediately. So China's patient, calculated, and economic, while Russia is aggressive, disrupted, and they're using military. Okay, just because they're cooperating together doesn't mean that they're unified. Again, they just have a common enemy, and they're like, fuck it, let's just group up together to fight against this enemy. That's what this whole slide can boil you up to. Okay, why does this matter globally? Okay, the conflict reshapes everything. Trade routes are being redrawn, so new trade routes is being formed, and this is why this goes back to what I said. To go watch that video, because you would understand what's the importance of trade routes. Okay, like I said earlier in the video. No, I think I said earlier in this video, like things cannot be exported and imported without trade routes, without ships being on the sea and going back and forth from country and country. So all that stuff is being redrawn up. It's not going to be the same anymore. Supply chains are fragile, right? Delays and shortages have become the new normal. And energy is energy is strategic again. Oil, gas, and power becomes a political leverage. Going back to Trump taking over Venezuela, he wants to have leverage over China and Russia. And neutral countries made it to the point where they have to choose sides. So before it was kind of like, yo, we staying out of it. We don't want to be involved. But now it's like, no, you have to choose sides because shit is getting real. All right. So this is a multi-decade shift, not just a news cycle. So keep this in mind. This is huge. This is going to affect the future of us, of our children, of the countries that we live in. So this is why this is super important, not just for us as traders, but just us as people in general. Okay. So what this means for the market. So macro is more important than the headlines. I said this before and I'll say it again. You can trade the headlines. You can. But at the end of the day, when you're looking for a trend, whether it's up or down, these things matter more than a headline, because headlines change at a blink of a second, okay? So gold and commodities matter, obviously. Energy stays volatile. Inflation risk persists and volatility becomes a new normal. We saw what happened last week when freaking silver went up more than $20 in 24 hours. That right there is a perfect example of that statement. Okay, so this impacts currencies, metals, equities, and long-term positioning. Every major asset class now trades on geopolitical pressure, not just economics. So it's not just about inflation, GDP, and unemployment rate. Now we have to understand what's going on geopolitical, because this will allow us to understand why the pairs or whatever we're trading is moving a certain way, okay? Like, for example, if there's a lot of pressure going on between the United States and China, the US dollar is going to be affected, the yuan is going to be affected. If there's still uncertainty going on, gold and silver is going to be affected. The Swiss is going to be affected. The yen is going to be affected. You see what I'm saying? So this is why it's important to pay attention to this information. Okay, so what I want you to take away from this isn't chaos, this is just pressure, right? Empires don't collapse overnight, right? They grind it out against each other until someone or something eventually breaks, and then boom, we have a new leader in town. And this is where we're on the edge, on the verge of a new leader coming in town. And I'm gonna make another video on that so I can show you guys what I think is gonna happen in the future, just my prediction. So your edge is to not panic, do not chase the headlines, and understand the system. Okay, so don't get scared, don't get wary. Why? Because you're educating yourself. If you made it all the way through this video, that means you actually care about what's going on, not just as a trader, but just as a person in general. So you educating yourself will allow you to be able to do well in the future and know where to put your pieces at on the board. Okay, again, you can trade the headlines temporarily, but make sure you're paying attention to the macro and not the headlines. Okay. So, as always, if you found any value in this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe and watch these videos, man, because I'm telling you, each video that I put out is literally are pieces to the puzzle that you can connect together and you can put yourself on the right side of the markets, all right? So, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.